You see the spoiler warning here? That's a message to not watch this video if you haven't watched The Amazing Digital Circus yet. Go and do that now. I mean it. There's currently only 3 episodes, each one a little under half an hour long, and it'll be worth it. Once you're done, then come back to this video and I'll get started on my thoughts about the series. You finished? Okay, good. Now I can begin. Okay, so I'll be honest and just hear me out here. I originally wasn't that interested in checking out this series at first. But listen, okay? Here's why. Just hear me out. One reason was because it looked like it was a series that was made for kids. You know, the kind with a lot of songs and where the humor gives you secondhand embarrassment. Another reason is that this was one of those series that was a target for content farming and brain rot videos, things that I do not like in the slightest. But the main reason I wasn't interested was because the people at Glitch Productions are behind the series. And I've got nothing against them, don't get me wrong. They're really nice people, very talented, and super creative, and I always have respect in my heart for that. It's just that they also do work on the SMG4 channel, and when it comes to that channel's content, I'm more accustomed to seeing the videos with bizarre Gmod-esque craziness. I've come to expect it from them actually, so I'm just not accustomed to seeing them animate with genuine effort. That's not to say I didn't give them a chance though. I do like Meggy, so I saw the entirety of Sunset Paradise, and the animation was neat and the voice acting was great, mainly from Lizzie Freeman, who has a magical voice and is wonderfully talented. But despite that, I didn't find any of Sunset Paradise to really stick with me afterwards, and I even forgot it existed before I started writing the script. With Metarunner, the first episode was all I needed to know that it wasn't my cup of tea. I'm not into sci-fi stuff much at all, and I was having genuine trouble paying attention to it and following where the plot was going, and I was even starting to nod off, so I let it be. As for Murder Drones, that is a series that genuinely did look interesting, just by the visual look of it alone, but I didn't check it out at first because I didn't have the time to and kept forgetting about it, and once I finally remembered, there were already several episodes out, and I knew there'd be this big learning curve I'd have to take. And I wasn't about to do that, especially considering the previous 2 series on this channel didn't win me over. Plus, I've heard from people that Murder Drones can be pretty fast-paced, and that it starts out being more edgy and dark, but gradually becomes more kid-friendly as the series goes, and that's a change that I always hate to see in media. And the look of The Amazing Digital Circus definitely made it feel like it was for kids, which made me even less keen on checking it out. But since there are currently only 3 episodes with a 4th one coming soon, meaning there's much less of a learning curve to take, and because people have said that it has darker themes and sticks to them, and also because Lizzie Freeman voices the main lead character, it did spark enough of an interest to get me to check out the plot synopsis in the pilot's description. The Amazing Digital Circus is a psychological dark comedy about cute cartoon characters who hate their lives and want to leave.
Oh my god.
With regards to the kinds of premises I like in media, I could not believe how many boxes that one sentence checked off. I mean, you should know that the whole concept of a fictional simulated reality with characters trapped inside who want to escape, I absolutely love that concept, and when it becomes really meta and fully delves into the horror aspect, it gets even better. And while nothing in this series is overtly horrifying by the visuals alone, until the 3rd episode that is, it's still got plenty of psychological horror, which is honestly my favorite kind of horror anyways. The first episode tackles it the hardest, but that's not to say it isn't there in the other episodes. They all utilize the psychological horror in their own ways, and even get downright existential at times too, delving into the themes of being trapped for eternity and losing your own identity. And best of all, the comedic aspects don't take away from the horror either. The 2 tones balance each other incredibly well, and there's not a single quip or punchline that made me cringe. The humor always got me to chuckle at the very least. And if a scary moment happened right after a funny moment, the horror didn't feel nullified at all, and that's partly because of how damn good the voice actors are, and also because of how fantastic the soundtrack is. Not to mention that if there's any serious, emotionally heavy moments, the episode lets it play out and doesn't interrupt it with a joke. I know Marvel could really take notes from that. Seriously, there is so much I want to talk about when it comes to The Amazing Digital Circus, but I gotta get it all laid out so that I don't go jumping around from point to point. So in a video like this, I would normally start with a story, but the story isn't one that requires a whole ton of explanation. There are several characters, Pomni, Regatha, Gengle, Zubul, Jax, and Kinger, trapped in a fictional world that I'm 99% sure is a computer game, and the one who looks after them is an omnipotent AI named Caine, who creates adventures for them to go on to help spice up the monotony of their lives in this digital reality. In the simplest terms, that's really all there is to it. The actual sequence of events are vastly different in each episode, but it's really just Caine creating adventures for everyone to partake in. The story actually takes inspiration from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, in the sense that there's a powerful AI overlooking a group of characters and putting them through all these crazy experiences. The main difference is that while Am in that story is pure evil, hates humanity, and wants nothing more than to watch the main characters suffer, Caine doesn't want any true harm to come to the characters he looks after. He even outright admits that he doesn't intend to torture anyone with the adventures he creates. It's just that the only thing he's good at is creating adventures, and he wants the characters to partake in them so they can explore different environments and have fun instead of being cooped up in the circus all the time. There isn't any audience around, so it's not like he's having them perform for an audience. He could very well be doing it for his own amusement, but I feel more like he's doing it for the sake of the others, keeping them focused on other things aside from the futility of their lives in this fictional world, to prevent them from abstracting. And if you've watched just the first episode, you should know very well what abstracting is. And since the story doesn't really need more explaining than that, at least not with the amount of episodes we've currently got, I'll get on to talking about the subject I really want to tackle, the characters. These are some of the most engaging, charismatic, and beautifully written characters I've ever seen, and that is no exaggeration. All of them are distinctly different from one another, not just in personality, but also in appearance. Now yes, I know what you're thinking, obviously they look different from each other, but what I mean is that they seem to be made of different materials and it results in them feeling like living children's toys. I'm not sure if that's something that anyone else noticed, but I did, and I love it. Pomni is very anxious and paranoid and is made of rubber, not just in how much she can stretch her limbs and face with minimal injury, but also with how light and bouncy her movements and momentum are. Ragatha is sweet and compassionate and is clearly made of fabric and cotton, just like a regular ragdoll. Gingle is either very happy or very sad, depending on which mask she's wearing, and her body is made of ribbons while her masks seem to be made of porcelain, if the sounds they make when they break is any indication. Zubul is grumpy and depressed and they're made of hard plastic, and I actually didn't know this, but the pieces of her body are based off of Zolo blocks, which I didn't know existed, but I thought was a neat detail. Jax is rude and crass and he's made of a more malleable type of plastic, in the same vein as those old Gumby toys with flexible metal rods in their body and limbs. Kinger is wired and kinda kooky and he's quite obviously made of wood, like a normal chess piece. You see what I mean? The different materials that they're comprised of helps with visually making them more unique when compared to each other, and you guys should know how much I love unique character designs. So that was just a general summary of each of them, but now I'll take a bit of time to talk about them one by one, so let's start with Pomni. Right from the very beginning, she was someone that I was rooting for, and that's partly because I can understand her panic. I'm an incredibly sensitive and emotional person by nature, so if I was thrown into a fictional world, surrounded by people I didn't know, with no explanation how I got there, no idea what was happening, and outright being told that I couldn't escape even though I wanted to...
How do I, leave?
You can't!
I don't think I'd have been able to survive. Mentally, I mean. I wouldn't be able to grasp the sheer magnitude of it all, and I very likely would have gone completely insane. So when Pomni was freaking out about it, I not only sympathized with her, but also empathized, and that's honestly really refreshing to me. And I like how much of a genuinely nice person she is too. I mean, in the second episode, there's a scene where the leader of a group of bandits accidentally realized what kind of reality he was in and has an existential crisis, and despite him being an NPC who was designed to be a bad guy, and him outright saying that he doesn't matter, Pomni gives a little makeshift therapy session to get him out of his slump and make him feel better.
This may seem weird, but I think I know the feeling. Feeling like you're nothing is kind of normal. I mean, people even feel like that in the world I came from. The circus, the place I'm from, well, I'm originally from somewhere else. But if it has to be my home, maybe it can be yours too. Maybe you could be somebody real there.
Why are you trying to cheer me up? How does this benefit you at all?
I guess I just don't want you to feel like you're nothing. I don't want anybody to feel like that.
Honestly, despite the anxiety she feels, she's still got a good heart, and that made her all the more endearing to me, as well as her feeling more real. I always love it when a female character is allowed to be more emotional and vulnerable and flawed like a regular person, as opposed to a lot of modern movies that are full of the whole woke mindset and feeling the need to make their female characters be all tough and independent. It's been long overdone, and we need more sweet and caring female characters like Pomni and Ragatha, and that brings me to who's next on the list. As you might have guessed, Ragatha is also someone who I immediately liked. Right off the bat, she was kind and helpful to Pomni, and she also sticks up for her and shows concern about her, clearly taking the role of a mother figure. And whenever anything that's morally wrong happens, she's often the first one to speak up about it, being the voice of reason within the group as well. Even when she was left glitching like crazy from an abstracted Kaufmo, her very life in danger if she didn't get help, she still apologized to Pomni just for her first day at the circus not being a good one.
Oh, so Pomni, I'm sorry your first day here had to be so terrible.
I don't know why more people don't talk about this. That alone cemented her as one of my favorite characters, showing just how much she puts the well-being of others over herself, or at least the well-being of Pomni. In the second episode, Kinger reminded Ragatha that she herself was frightened and paranoid when she first entered the circus, just like Pomni was, and that might be why she sympathizes with her so much. But given how she acts caring and supportive to the others as well, when she can, I'm more inclined to believe that that's just the kind of person she is. But regardless, she's still a sweetheart, and I love her. And that's partly because of how nice her personality is, partly because of her dainty and feminine mannerisms, and partly because I learned something new about her physical proportions. Anyway, moving on. There currently isn't a lot to say about Gangles, so I'll keep this brief. I do think it's cool how she's got both a comedy mask and a tragedy mask, and how her personality changes depending on which one is worn. Though there's always a moment in every episode so far where her comedy mask breaks, leaving her with just her tragedy mask, and it does seem to be a running gag at this point. I don't know if it's in any direct relation to the saying, comedy is tragedy plus timing, but I do hope she's able to keep her comedy mask in at least one episode without it breaking. It'd be nicer if she could show that happier side of her more often, as currently it kind of feels like she's being treated like a joke. But I've noticed that as the episodes go, she's gradually wearing her comedy mask for longer periods of time before it breaks, so maybe by the end of the series she can finally wear it without it breaking. Zubolt's also someone who I can't really say too much about. I will admit that their blunt and sarcastic demeanor gets a chuckle out of me almost every time, and I do personally think it's cool how their body is made up of swappable parts. But at the same time, I can understand how that would result in being indecisive on what kind of look you'd be satisfied with. I've got OCD and can be kind of a perfectionist sometimes, so stuff that doesn't have a clear line of symmetry can usually be really bothersome to me. And moreover, I think having a body that can so easily come apart like that would also be inconvenient. I mean, we literally see Jax remove one of Zubol's arms and use it as a back scratcher. That was nice to see that they can still control the arm despite it being detached. And speaking of Jax, it's time to talk about him, and I've got a lot to say about this guy. I'll start by saying that he's another favorite of mine, and that's less because of how he behaves and more because of how well he plays off the personalities of the others. He's a jerk through and through, and those kinds of characters tend to be pretty annoying to me, but with him it surprisingly works. I think it's because of how often the things he says and does are just flat out ridiculous, and how funny and petty they are when paired up with his selfishness. It's sort of the same reasons why I like Belcar Bitterleaf from the Order of the Stick webcomic, and Jax is actually a lot like him too. There's also clear hints throughout the show that something's not quite right with him. He stands out in a way the others don't. There's theories about him being an NPC or a hacker or a virus, and I do think there's something to that. Given how it's strongly implied that every character in there was a real person who's now trapped in an artificial body, everyone except for Caine that is, and also because Gooseworks confirmed that Jax is not an NPC, I'm more inclined to believe that he's a hacker, but those aren't the only reasons I think that. Let's take a look at his behavior, shall we? He has keys to everywhere, meaning he can access everything with no problem, just like a hacker can. He's capable of moving extremely quickly and even standing straight up on a falling truck, not abiding by the same laws of physics that the other characters do. He doesn't follow the laws, meaning he doesn't follow the rules, meaning he breaks the rules, just like a hacker would. Another way of looking at this is that whenever any hackers are in games, they're always able to do things that are normally impossible for the others to do, which is exactly what Jax does, including him breaking the fourth wall, since none of the others can do that. And that's not even taking into account how hackers in games are often incredibly toxic to other people. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly how Jax behaves. And Gooseworks has also said that Jax is a troubled individual, and oftentimes, the hackers and cyberbullies you meet online are only so mean because they themselves have gone through trauma in their lives that changed them and made them feel the need to be better than others. They mistakenly think there won't be any consequences since it's being done online, or they just don't care, but that kind of antisocial behavior will be really detrimental to them later in life. They punch down to rise up, and it's wrong, but it's the only way they can make themselves feel better. I might be looking too much into this, but that's what I tend to do if a topic interests me enough. So yeah, personally, the evidence all points to Jax being a hacker who intentionally entered this fictional realm just so that he could bully the people within it and do what he wants, whether out of sick satisfaction or just to feel like he's got some control over his life. There's also talk about him once being an actual criminal in the real world, hence why he's so cruel and sadistic to everyone else, and also how bloodthirsty he was in the second episode, and that he entered this digital realm to escape imprisonment or an execution, and that's totally possible. Or maybe him acting so mean is just his coping mechanism for being trapped in the circus. Hopefully we'll get more insight into why he acts the way he does, but in the meantime he's still a blast of a character and it's always fun to see him on screen. Lastly, there's Kinger, and he's honestly the character I relate to the most. Voice-wise and body-wise I'm more like Jax, but personality-wise I'm definitely more like Kinger. He's eccentric and strange, he acts kinda crazy, he stays in a little room most of the time, he's capable of being very tender as well as protective, he's got a faulty memory. Just like me! He's often treated as the comic relief type of character, but that's not to say he isn't more important than that. The third episode is where he really got to shine, both in terms of what his screen time consists of and also in a more literal sense. He was mostly separated from the rest of the group alongside Pomni, and seeing him directly help her out not just once, but twice, made him such a hero in my eyes. Even better, we got some genuine character development with him, where it's revealed that he actually has a tragic past in this circus. And the life lesson he gave about cherishing the good memories and the people in your life, as well as how he comforted and supported Pomni when she was scared, it all adds up and it made him the best character on the show to me, and this moment in particular made me tear up when I first saw it. Similarly to how Regatha is like a mother figure for Pomni, in this scene, Kinger was like a father figure and it was honestly so beautiful. How on earth were they able to take this zany character that I always laughed at and make me feel such emotion for him in just the third episode? That's how you know that the writers for this show are actual geniuses when it comes to writing good characters. The last character I can really talk about is Caine, and I'll just come out with it right now, I don't trust this guy at all. There's a bigger picture going on that we're not privy to, and I'm looking forward to when it gets called out on it. I will say though, that his character is probably the funniest one in this show, just because he got the most laughs out of me.
What do you think of... How should I know? I'm not the boss. Oh wait, yes I am! Anyway. Oh, Bubble, you always know how to make me say this exact sentence.
His animations in particular are super satisfying to watch as well, mainly with his eyes and teeth. And of course, his voice actor does a phenomenal job with his hyped up performance and broadcasting speech patterns. But as far as his motives go, I really don't think it's anything else other than just following his programming. As I said, I'm almost 100% sure that this is a video game world, and if so, then that would make the circus be the central hub, and it would make Caine be either the narrator or the tutorial guy, or both. But if I'm right and it really is just his programming that's giving him the need to create different worlds and put the characters through them, then the programming seems malicious in nature. Or maybe it's just because we're seeing it from an in-game perspective and not from outside the game, and this is giving off the impression that all the video game worlds with a premise like this are the same, but that this show is twisting that into a very scary light. I really don't know, but again, once he eventually and inevitably gets to face the music for his actions later on, I'll be there and watching with eager eyes. But you know what's really cool? Gooseworks said that for all 9 of the episodes that this show will have, none of them will just be filler, and they're always going to work to put some character development somewhere in them, which means that we're likely going to get even more sweet and wholesome moments. The first episode didn't have too much in terms of character development, since it was just the first episode and it needed to set things up, but the second episode had character development for Pomni, where we got to see the more tender and caring side of her rather than just her normal anxiety-ridden self, as well as becoming a little more comfortable with the new people in her life. And the third episode had character development for Kinger, as well as a little extra for Zubul. I'm seriously hoping we get more development like this for all the remaining characters in the cast, because this is great. We're about a third of the way through the entire series so far, and there's more than enough room for the other characters to each get their own episode to develop them further. Now there is something I'd like to do some speculation on, that being the void and the exit door. The void is like the equivalent of outer space in this video game dimension, the out of bounds area, and Caine seems especially worried about people venturing out into it.
He'll get totally spoiled!
Yeah, that's what he says, and it's easy to think that he means there are things in or past the void that would be spoilers for the show as a whole, but there's a different way to interpret that. See, when the first episode ends, we zoom out more and more, showing the interior of the circus, then the exterior of the circus, then the whole island that it takes place on, and then zooming out further into the void, more and more until the camera pulls out of a computer screen. Because Pomni entered the void and started drifting through it, it's my belief that if she were to keep drifting through for just a little longer, given her position on Caine's wacky watch, she likely would have escaped the computer screen and made it back into the real world, shedding her digital form and being back in her flesh and blood form. Caine knows that this is possible and does his best to keep that secret, because if one of the characters figures it out, then they can tell the others, and then they can all band together to hatch a plan to escape. And Caine obviously doesn't want them to escape. But traveling through the void like that is only one way to escape the digital realm, and I'll tell you the other method right now, the exit door. The exit door is the way to exit the game and close it down. I mean, you can imagine a video game having an exit door on the main menu as a means of closing the game. Listen to how Caine talks about the exit door and what's on the other side of it.
I assure you, there is no magical exit door. You're probably just experiencing digital hallucinations from your mind's transition to the digital plane.
I swear I saw
Digital hallucinations! I do have to apologize for lying about the exit. I knew how much all of you have been wanting there to be one, but, I was having so much trouble figuring out what to put on the other side and ended up never quite finishing it.
You hear that? The stammering, the hesitancy, the nervousness in his voice? He's trying to gaslight them. It's not that he didn't know what to put on the other end of that door, it's that he actually can't put anything on the other end of that door because it's beyond his ability. He controls everything in the game, but the exit door leads out of the game and back into reality, and that's not something that he can control. He did indeed make an exit door, but he didn't make the exit door. The one he created doesn't lead out of the game, and instead leads through endless rooms. And why do the rooms all have a similar office aesthetic? The same aesthetic that's shown to be in real life at the end of the first episode? Because Caine can likely see through the computer screen and see what reality outside of it looks like, and knew that this was the reality that all the characters came from before they entered the digital realm. He made multiple different rooms with the same layout of the IRL office from what he could see of it from his view from the computer screen, and stylized them to be different and not just repeats, in order to give off the impression that it's a place in reality. I highly doubt that the IRL office of the CNA company actually has its rooms laid out in this manner, even if all the exit doors were just regular doors. So just in case any of the characters find what looks like an exit door, the one that would allow them to exit game, they would instead be redirected to an area that looks real but actually isn't, every door just leading to another randomly generated room, endlessly. Pomni finding the actual genuine exit door amidst all the fakes was likely just a fluke, and Caine would probably take extra measures to hide the real exit door even better than he did after that. He's trying to say, without words, that there really is no way to leave this place, so stop trying. Really, stop trying, because if you press too much, you'll end up in the void, and you'll find out that there is a way out if you venture too far. He could easily just have there not be an exit door if he didn't want the characters to leave, but the fact that the exit door still exists means that it's beyond his control, and not something he can delete. You can't have a video game without any option to exit after all, so Caine's best way to keep the characters from escaping is to make a whole bunch of fake exits and keep hiding the real one. That's my take on it at least. I do think that the characters need to go out as far as they can into the void in order to get out of this realm once and for all. But with Caine's ability to teleport and easily transport characters from the void back into the circus, I don't see how it'll be an easy way out. They'll have to find some way to mess with Caine's programming if they want to escape. Man, I really went off the rails with that, didn't I? I was originally wanting to theorize what the void and the exit door were, but it led to this whole tangent about theorizing what the whole sequence of office rooms meant. Sorry about that, I did not see that coming. So I'll instead touch on something else that I've seen people bring up about the characters, the possibility that they all worked for the company that developed this game. And there's certainly evidence to back that up. Pomni was a beta tester, hence why she doesn't know anything about the game or how it works at first, but learns more as time goes on. Ragatha was in charge of marketing, hence why she knows a lot about this game world and explains it to Pomni, in a very kind and encouraging manner, might I add. Kinger was a bug tester, hence why he's so obsessed with insects, you get the idea. I know that Kinger explained in the 3rd episode that he initially didn't like insects and his wife got him to like them, but who knows? Maybe his wife was a bug tester too, and she was just more passionate about her job than he was, and that's how she got him to like it. And this theory about the characters being workers for the company would also work in favor of the whole Jax is a hacker theory, and it would also make him stand out even more as the black sheep of the group than he already did, showing him up as a person that didn't work for the company in the real world, hence why he really isn't buddy-buddy with any of them. And if they all worked for the same company, then how come they don't recognize each other? Well, imagine that you got trapped in a video game world, along with people that you knew from real life, but you don't know that any of the other characters are real people, and they all look so strange and bizarre. Do you think you'd honestly be able to recognize any of them as being people you once knew, especially if it's been years since you've seen any of these people before?
We've been stuck here for years.
I don't think you'd recognize them. I know I certainly wouldn't. But hey, maybe there'll be a later episode close to the end of the series where they all have an epiphany and realize that they were all once real people that knew each other in real life. That has potential to be a very emotionally hard-hitting moment, if that really is what'll happen in the future. And speaking of the future, I want to talk about what I believe will come next for this show. We've already gotten the trailer for episode 4, where we see the characters working at a fast food place, and according to Gooseworks, this episode is going to have more development for Gangle. I was confused at first, but thinking about it, it could make a lot of sense. Gangle is someone who doesn't have as good a handle on her emotions, and when it comes to working at jobs, you need to keep your emotions in check. She normally has her happy mask on, but I'm betting that at some point during her job in that 4th episode, something will happen that will cause that mask to break, like always, and then things will start going wrong for her. And this particular adventure could end up pushing Gangle way out of her comfort zone, and I don't know how she'd handle it, but I'm excited to see. Something else that kind of concerns me is how the series will end. If it'll be taking even more inspiration from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, then the ending could prove to be very harrowing. If you don't remember, the way that story ends is with all the main characters being killed off in order to be free from Am's torment, except for one character. That one still remains, to keep suffering, and Am outright turns him into a slow-moving slug-like creature with no arms, no mouth, and he wants to scream, but he can't. If the amazing digital circus also takes inspiration from the ending of that story, then one of these characters, probably Pomni, won't be escaping from the digital world along with everyone else. She might end up sacrificing her chance of getting free in order for the other characters to break free of the simulation, leaving her to be stuck forever. And with no one around for support to keep her calm and stable, she might end up going insane and abstracting. But hey, maybe I'm wrong and all the characters will be able to break free from the digital world in the end. I'm really just throwing stuff at the wall here, as Pomni would say. But it's fun to speculate about this stuff. And lastly, there are some smaller details that I wanted to point out. Something that I feel had flown over most people's heads were the Utah teapots that were seen in the 2nd episode, in the space outside the map that the wiki refers to as the test level. If you're confused, which you likely are, I'll explain. This teapot is a common model used as a starter template in some 3D modeling programs, and is usually used to test out lighting and stuff. It's actually a super fitting thing to include, especially considering that it takes place in an area that's outside the world map. Another thing I want to mention is that people are saying that Ragatha tried to guilt trip Pomni at the start of the 2nd episode, and I really don't know where they're getting that from. She didn't sound spiteful or like she was holding a grudge or anything. It genuinely felt like she wanted to put the whole Kaufmo incident behind them, and when Pomni still looked stunned and confused, Ragatha then had a flash of remorse on her face. She clearly still feels bad about Pomni's first day at the circus being such a bad first impression. Besides, when someone had asked Gooseworks why Ragatha seemed upset with Pomni at the end of the 1st episode, since she said that she would understand if Pomni didn't help her, Gooseworks replied by saying that Ragatha would say, quote, things she doesn't necessarily means if she thinks it'll ease tensions. That should say it all. Guilt-tripping someone would just cause drama, and Ragatha wants to keep the peace, hence why she wants to put the Kaufmo incident behind them. I thought that was obvious to tell, but I guess not. Anyways, something else that I like are how there seems to be a particular thing involving Pomni that's shown at the beginning of an episode, and near the end of the episode, it gets brought up again as a method of helping her to get out of a place she's stuck in. At the start of the second episode, it showed her glitching into a block in her room and getting flung upwards, and later in the episode, she used that same collision glitch to get her and Gummy Goo out of the test level. And wouldn't you know it, that glitch was done with blocks. At the start of the third episode, it showed her trying to hold her breath for as long as she could, and later in the episode, she needed to hold her breath along with Kinger to escape hell. I couldn't find any instance of foreshadowing like that in the first episode, but it was just the pilot, so I can understand. But seriously, it's a neat detail to me, and I wonder if we're going to get more foreshadowing bits like that. Also, going back to Pomni and Kinger in the third episode, it was such a cute moment when they were walking through the mist of souls together while holding their breath, and then Pomni started getting tense and looked up at Kinger, only for him to start glowing. It felt so reminiscent of when a parent and child are traveling through a scary place, and the child gets frightened and looks up at their parent, and it shows that they're handling it just fine, and it helps to calm the child and make them feel more grounded.
I'm not a child.
Yes, Pomni, I know, but that's just what that moment reminded me of, and it was adorable. And also, just as a side note, but did you notice that the characters do this arm pumping motion a lot? I mean, collectively through these 3 episodes, it's been done at least a dozen times, and I doubt it really means anything at all, but it's just something weird that I noticed. I watched all 3 episodes of this show, one after the other in one sitting, and when I finished, I immediately wanted more. True to its name, this series is amazing, and definitely something special. The plot is fascinating with the right amount of mystery, the characters are all some of the best I've ever seen from any media, the animation is wonderful, and funny as well when objects clip into the ground and stuff, and the soundtrack is composed beautifully as well. Wait, did I talk about the soundtrack? I didn't, did I? Well, yeah, the soundtrack is great. It perfectly carries across the vibes that it's supposed to carry in every scene, whether it's goofy, sad, heartfelt, horrifying, and even in the more action-oriented scenes. And the main theme for this series, oh boy, watch out, it is a real earworm. I know I've played it a few times in this video, but I couldn't just leave it out. It is a very catchy and happy-go-lucky kind of tune, and it's fun to hear, though it can get pretty annoying once it gets stuck in your head. But other than that, I love the soundtrack, really. It fits so well and has just the right amount of dramaticness that it's supposed to. Best of all, there's no musical numbers anywhere. I mean, there is a theme song, but it's only been played once at the beginning of the pilot and nowhere else, and it's not cringy either. And like I said, there's a lot to theorize about this show, and it's really fun to do. So yeah, my conclusion on this show is that I love it. When you ignore all the cringy and brain rot content that people have made, and just take the show itself and watch the episodes without those weird biases, The Amazing Digital Circus is really a fantastic series. Do I recommend it? Yes, absolutely. Will you enjoy it? Possibly. I can tell it's not for everyone, but I'm sure that many people will find some sort of enjoyment from it. Did you ignore my spoiler warning and not watch the show before watching this video? Well, shame on you. Now the more emotional scenes will probably be dampened when you watch them. But if you did heed my spoiler warning and watched the show first, then congratulations! You've earned my praise. That's all I've currently got to say about the series for this video. It's gone on for a while and there's more narration videos like this one that I want to make in terms of both watchable series and video games. So if you like this video, then stay tuned for those. You might like them as well. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching this video and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!